Thomas, can you come out here real quick, please? You're looking for, what kind of cord?
Lightning for the iPad.
For, Paul?
Do you happen to have a lightning charging cable?
Okay, he'll look for that.
I don't need it right now, I can get it later from you if you do have one.
Okay.
Regular thing,
Have to borrow for the meeting or have to keep for?
just a ball.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Thanks, I need to- All your technical.
I swear this chair's gonna make me fall.
Blinking the chair already.
Yes, yes, no, you're good. Yeah, I didn't, yeah, because you're reading, Jack is reading something else.
Very good handwriting.
Yeah, you're gonna read for the.
I'm sure she,
Yeah. No, Jack's not.
I figured I'd be next.
Well, I just gonna change
This
the
guy
nameplate
right
so
here.
you're not.
Thank you.
That's so hilarious.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. Okay. Are we in business? All right. I'll call to order the special meeting of the Federal Way City Council for May 20th, 2025. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're here for a study session. We have the King County Parks Levy briefing. We'll have Jason Gerwin, our Deputy Parks Director, introduce, we'll have him do the introduction.
Yeah, and so thank you, City Council, Mayor Farrell. About 2 weeks ago, I was at a King County Directors meeting, and Warren presented the King County levy. As Council and Mayor know, we rely heavily on the King County Parks levy for some of our major projects, and it is up for a vote on August 5th. And with that, I will turn it over to Warren Jimenez, Director of King County Parks, to give you a full presentation.
All right, thank you. Welcome, Warren.
Thank you. Thanks for the time, and apologies for the technical hiccup. But again, appreciate the time. And we have a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation to kind of share with you. And I think what I'd like to do is work through those slides. We'll work through those pretty efficiently. Be sure that we have plenty of time for questions, since I know you all have a full agenda for tonight. So again, appreciate the time. So yeah, the King County Parks Replacement Levy was officially referred in April for the August 5th ballot. And if you can kind of go to the next slide, we'll talk more about the levy renewal and the design. I'm really focusing in these three groups around taking care of the system that we have, maintaining it, enhancing through important connections, as well as growing and connecting this open space, regional trails, other important programming that we're hoping to accomplish with the levy proceeds. And so we'll get into more detail about what we mean in each of these three focus areas. Go to the next slide. And this is a quick snapshot of what the levy proposal is. It is a levy renewal rate of 23.29 cents for every 1,000 of assessed value. So what would that mean for the homeowner? The median value home in King County is $844,000. So the cost per household per month is $16.38 per month. This is a renewal levy, so if you were to compare that to the current levy and what one would pay the difference of, it would be $2.50 more per month if you were to make that comparisons to the current levy. And it's focused, this pie chart kind of focuses in on where those investments would go. I mentioned kind of the three buckets in the previous slide. You can kind of see many of the details here. About 34% goes into maintaining the system, keeping the system clean, safe, and open. 47% would go towards increasing access through the various ways that we currently do it, as well as new ways through the levy. So think of things like the pass-through funding, which I know that the Federal Way receives. The city, think of the grant programs, think of strategic partners, think of other grant programs, other new park development, and then growing and connecting the system, about 19%, going towards regional trails, climate resiliency projects, and other things. So we'll quickly work through more specificity in each of these areas. Go to the next slide. And if you were to look at the legislation that was referred, the legislation also includes an allocation plan that talks about investments in each one of these line items, from aquatic facilities, working your way down through grants, through operations, through regional trails investment, through active recreation. And so this presentation is a way to kind of match up with that allocation plan. And so we'll work through each one of those bulleted items as we work through the presentation. Go to the next slide. And beginning with the aquatic investments, so $68 million in total will go towards the Weyerhaeuser King County Aquatic Center. So $22 million investing in the facilities for some major maintenance needs, as well as some energy efficiency upgrades. We've been chipping away at making those strategic investments at the Aquatic Center to ensure that we're able to make it and continue to be a national treasure as what we think it is, and continuing to make those investments in the facility, as well as providing recreational programming for the community. And then continuation of the aquatics-focused grant program, as well as some specific projects that would be included as part of the levy package that you see here. Go to the next slide. And $60 million will go towards ball fields and sports courts in places like South County Ball Fields, which is close in the proximity here in South King County, as well as rehabilitation of fields and some turf replacements. And then a new grant program focused on ball fields to design, build, and program new and enhanced public recreational facilities. So a jurisdiction like the City of Federal Way could be able to apply for this grant program. Go to the next slide. And speaking of grant programs, these 3 grant programs are a continuation from this levy into the next levy, focused on these focus areas from doing partner type of projects to increasing access and use of recreational facilities, to sports, play, and outdoor recreation through Youth and Amateur Sports Grant Program. These are all programs that we use to increase access in various ways and for various purposes. The middle one, Healthy Communities and Parks Fund, of that $30 million, $10 million would go specifically for designated for cities. So again, places like the Federal Way could be apply for that program. Go to the next slide. And a continuation of some existing partnerships and some new focus areas from the zoo, the aquarium, as well as new focus on the Waterfront Park, Pacific Science Center, and Memorial Stadium project. This would go towards those strategic partners. Go to the next slide. And then a new aspect of this levy is specifically focused on parks capital and open space pass-through. This was previously actually a grant program with this current levy. Through the conversation that went through the council process, one of the new ideas here is just making it a direct pass-through to cities like Federal Way as well as other city jurisdictions based on what you see here is a formula approach that includes equity criteria as well as population. And then the next slide speaks to the pass-through program. Again, the pass-through program has been an important foundational piece to the levy over the years. And so it's a direct allocation to cities, towns, and park districts. The park districts is a first-time add. If you were to compare the $119 million is on the ballot for this time around, it's $60 million, so it's about doubling of that pass-through funding based on the formula criteria here that you see on this slide. Go to the next slide. And, a big portion of the levy goes towards our operations and maintenance for King County Parks and the system here that we have responsibility for. The levy proceeds makes up about 85% of our budget, so it's a critical funding source to be able to provide on the regional trail system that you see here, from our regional trails to our parks and open space. And we'll skip through the next couple of slides here, but I'll hit on them pretty quickly. You see kind of mainly about the 34% that I mentioned in the previous slide going towards taking care of the system, as well as emphasis in a few areas around safety and security, youth conservation core program, a tribal, indigenous, and historic interpretation program as well. And this slide just speaks to the complexities of the type of team that we need to take care and maintain the system. Go to the next slide. $175 million would be invested in as match. $90 million would be part of the match for the acquisition work, which leverages Conservation's Futures Tax. And then additional funding going towards forest stewardships, some specific climate projects, as well as a Council Manic grant program of $5 million for climate resiliency types of projects. as well investments in Fitzpatrick's program, and then things like natural resources and site planning and remediation work throughout the system. And then in the regional trails system, $182 million going to places from East Trail to Lake to Sound to interurban trails south, as well as Sioux Creek Trail. Those various investment levels are there. And then in the next slide speaks to $41 million here in very specific projects from interurban north to Kirkland, investments to Maple Valley pedestrian bridge to Snoqualmie Trail, as well as having some flexibilities of funding as we make progress with other regional trails throughout the system. And then in the new park development improvement space, a little bit more than $45 million would be going to a couple of different projects, including Lakeland Park North Development, which is a acquisition that we recently completed here over the past couple of years, which is nearby Federal Way. This funding would allow us to move through design and construction of a new park at that location, as well as investments in the Skyway Community Center, off-leash dog parks, and then some specific allocations in Kenmore, as well as Federal Way, a specific allocation there. And then with the system and the size that we have, we certainly have our major maintenance needs with its existing facilities. And so we have a good portion of the active recreation and repair and renovation going towards that, making a good down payment on that, including making rehab to our trails, as well as Marymore Park and Sunset Park, which is located in SeaTac. And then the next slide just talks a little bit more in specificity about how we would plan to make those major maintenance investments, from general infrastructure to playground rehabilitation to water access to backcountry trails, as well as some specific projects in Des Moines and Preston. And I covered a lot of ground there in a short amount of time. The election day is August 5th. It's going to come up very quickly, I think. Happy to take any questions that you all might have.
Council President?
Thank you very much for your presentation, Mr. Jimenez. Right?
Yes. That's
So we have a lot of open space east of the freeway here that is being populated by encampments. And it's a real problem for our people who live there. It's right outside our city limits. We can't do anything about it. We're very dependent on you to help us with that. Do you have plans in your open space for encampment removal?
Yeah, we'd love to partner with you and work with you about, where you're seeing those needs. We certainly have been seeing some encampments in our system, and so happy to work with you on that. Part of the strategy around making some of the safety and security investments is to help ensure that we have the right level of resources around issues of encampments and beyond. Of course, we want to lead with compassion, but also knowing that we want to be sure that our parks, trails, and open space are safely accessible.
So one other question. I noticed in your list of parks and trails and renovations and new parks, the only one for Federal that I could see was listed was Hunruby Garden, and that's at $350,000, while other cities are getting multi-million-dollar projects. I'm wondering why we're a little bit light on that.
Yeah, so those direct allocations were part of the council process as they considered the executive's proposal at the time. And I know one of the things that are a continuation of part of the levy proceeds that directly benefit Federal Way are a few things. The pass-through program certainly is one of them. The other thing I noted as well is the direct allocation of $25 million that would go towards Parks Capital and open space. So to be able to kind of be responsive to your park system needs, that would be available as well. In addition to the various grant programs that I had a chance to note along the way. So in addition to kind of that direct allocation, there are also other opportunities that are possibilities for federal way.
So there's actually 25 million that we could access if we needed, for example, for encampment removal.
So the 25 million is actually a direct allocation, so that will be allocated directly to cities. And so Federal Way, based on the formula, will get a portion of that based on that formula, in addition to the $119 million that I referenced as part of the direct pass-through. So it's actually in total, if I can do the math correctly, $144 million of direct pass-through.
Thank you.
All right, before I call on other council members, we need to excuse council members Lydia Sefadawson and Councilmember Jack Walsh. They are unavailable and excused for this meeting, and I'll say it during the next meeting as well. Councilmember Honda?
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for being here. So I'm a member of the SCA Public Issues Committee, and this came before us in March, and I'm just reviewing the minutes here. So the Public Issues Committee is made up of a representative from every city except Seattle and King County. And this was, when this discussion occurred, we actually eliminated another item on our agenda so we could spend more time on this, because there are so many cities that are concerned about this. And the fact that it's a big increase, and that cities were all concerned about the formula and as to how much money that they would be getting from this levy. And I'm wondering if I'm wondering how the formula could possibly be changed, or if it is written in stone, if it can be changed.
The formula is out as I presented it, based on the legislation that was referred to the ballot. So that formula is set. And, you know, part of the process that it went through, from not only the council subcommittee, as well as the regional committee, which is made up of, you know, some cities. And I remember coming to that meeting and having this good, robust conversation about, you know, how do you balance those various interests, you know, from direct allocation to, obviously, you know, I mentioned kind of the needs that we have from a regional service provider, from Park Space. You know, you saw some of those changes working through that process, including, you know, the $25 million, which was initially proposed as a grant program. Now it's a direct pass-through allocation based on a formula. And so, you know, some of those changes happened through that process. The other change that happened too, I think, is the size reduced, I believe, by a penny, if I remember the math correctly on that. And then at the same time, the $119 million of pass-through remained. So there's definitely some of those changes. And the legislation as passed and the formula that was in terms of where it landed with that legislation would go hand in hand at the ballot. And so that's pretty much is not changeable at this point in time.
I know there was a lot of concern about levy fatigue, and, you know, knowing that there are going to be a number of increases in the gas tax and things like that going up. The B&O tax that businesses will have to pay, you know, what the state legislature has passed. I support this, but I also know that we're really stretching people. You know, people have only so much money to pay for things, and I'm concerned that this may not pass because it's asking for quite a bit, considering the current environment that we're living in. And I think there needs to be a really big campaign to educate the voters about this and why this is important and what their cities are going to see, how their cities will benefit. But there was quite a bit of concern at the PIC meeting, so, and that is a representation of the cities here in King County. Thank you.
All right. Anything in response to that?
No, I am wearing my public employee hat right now, so,
Yep.
yeah.
All right, just want to give you the opportunity. Council-
If I could,
Yeah.
I think what we're seeing here is, this is a pending ballot measure, so we're supposed to keep it factual. So
Yep.
we could steer the conversation away from endorsing or criticizing, more just asking questions about the facts.
Good reminder, thank you. Councilmember McDaniel?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for showing up. First one is, do you mind sending the presentation over so we can digest it a little bit?
Definitely, and
Okay.
sorry about the mix-up.
It's all good. We'll be able to look at it later anyways. Second question is, just to make sure I understand, it sounds like you guys went from like $13.80 to $16.38, rough numbers. Is that about is it 19% increase, or what was the actual increase percentage?
So if you were to compare it up against the current levy, it's $2.50 when you make that comparison per month, based on that medium household.
Gotcha. But, so percentage-wise, I'm gonna say, okay, so about 19% is what I figured out. So I'll double check just to verify. I just wanted to get an idea on that one. The second one is gonna be a question I had last time on levies. What does it cost the city to put levies on the ballot? Because I believe there's a price associated to this. Nothing for this one?
This is a King County ballot measure, so the county will pay.
The county pays for it? Okay. And then I guess the last question is, I noticed that you did mention that we do have the garden that's on this one, but there is did you say it was $25 million potential grant opportunities for different park locations? Is that correct?
So there's actually a $25 million pass-through, so an additional pass-through dollars would be allocated. So $119 million really operates similarly to how the current pass-through, there's some changes to it, but it's in the same kind of, it works similarly. And then as we went through the council process, it was initially proposed as a grant program, but then it was decided through the process to have it a direct allocation. So it's a direct allocation to cities.
Okay. Could you educate me a little bit more on the difference between the grant and the pass-through? I understood part of what you're saying, but could you give me an example that shows the two different ways?
Sure, yeah. I could show you the slide, but in essence, it's a pass-through. So it was initially proposed by Executive Constantine as a grant program, $25 million. And actually, I think you all may have benefited or even applied to a Parks Capital and Open Space grant program that we currently have in the current levy. Well, in the next levy, in essence, that would be just directly a pass-through to the cities. And some of the rationale to that was because it was mainly cities that were eligible for that grant program. So from a streamlined standpoint, part of the change is that, okay, let's go ahead and make that a pass-through as opposed to a grant program.
Does the grant program just require the additional checkups and paperwork and administrative stuff, whereas
It's
the
a
pass-throughs?
it's a competitive process. So now that $25 million allocation is no longer a competitive process. It's based on a pass-through, based on the formula details that I shared.
So does that mean every city will automatically have a percentage of that money passed through
Correct.
to them? Okay, so okay.
No competitive program, nothing at all. And then, that's different compared to some of the other grant programs that I noted here that are more of a competitive process, with the exception of the climate grant program, which is a council managed program. But yeah, so basically more pass-through, additional grant programs, which are a competitive process.
Gotcha. My last question is actually, Jason, what do we currently receive from levy funding to go into our parks?
We're just shy of about 3 million currently is what we take through the direct pass-through. And with this levy, if this levy is approved, we're right around 6 million or a little over 6 million that we'd see in a direct pass-through. And so, as you guys have seen me come to council meetings recently and asking for allocation to spend on some of the deferred maintenance needs we've had, it's the direct pass-through that you guys are allocating and authorizing the Parks Department to spend. The city has also benefited from the grant program, specifically the youth sports grant. Like, that's how we redid the artificial turf. It's a Holly portion of that was paid for that way. The track repairs, it's a Holly, was part of that youth athletics grant. And so we strive and apply for as many of those grants as we can, as well as utilize that direct pass-through.
And is that the current 3, the next thing will probably be 6 million. Is that per year, or is that throughout the whole levy timeframe?
And I'd have to go back and check my numbers, but I thought that was on an annual, or, it's over the 6-year period.
Over 6 years, and the levy is a 6-year then?
Correct.
Okay, those are my 2 questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilmember Dovey and then Councilmember Tran.
I had a couple questions. I think one of them got answered. The levy's a 6-year levy.
Correct.
And then the pass-through, is it based on valuation or population? Because your average price is not Federal Way. That's more I mean, we're lower than the east side, so is the allocation based on the collected money, or is it based on population?
It's actually a combination of those things. So there's a certain minimum amount baseline based on population. And then it goes up if you're a little bit bigger size. And then the rest is split by a 60-40 percentage. The 60% being assessed value and the 40% being population. So it's kind of a combination of things. Yeah.
Okay. And then the dollars that are passed through, which could be budgeted every year, the city has complete control of how it's spent, or?
Yeah, one of the things that I think we'd heard, and this is before my time, but certainly a variable and factor into the current levy is we've heard from, folks like your parks experts say, can you really provide us maximum flexibility with the levy? And so that's what you're doing. Just so long as it's going towards your parks needs, then you have maximum flexibility how you can use it.
And the money for the aquatic center, is that based over the 6 years, or is that going to be start in the first year and they're going to spend 20-some million dollars, or how does that actually get spent? Is it a front-end project or towards the end of the levy?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would imagine that we certainly have the needs here, and I think part of it is an implementation question. So, how can we be sure that the projects of most need are ready to get completed? As well as a little bit of a cash flow issue. So some of it's going to be a combination of those factors, but I would imagine over the life of the levy, we'll kind of chip away at that, as opposed to kind of all at once.
And my last question has to do with trails. It seems like you have a list of trails that you're going to be working on, or part of the levy. In Federal Way, on our south end, we have a lot of green space that is designated for trails. Is this some of this money going to be competitive for new trails that haven't been built yet, or do you compete for the money, or is it already all pre-spent, pre-allocated?
Certainly the pass-through, funding is one area to think about,
Correct.
as well as some of the other grant programs that could be possibilities to be to put in a competitive grant application for. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here. I have two questions. One of them is kind of follow-up on Councilmember Honda and Councilmember McDaniel asked before. So the current levy, the difference between the current levy and the proposed levy is about 14 to 15% increase, according to my calculation. While the inflation right now is reduced to between 2.6 to 3%. Why we increase that much? I mean, so that's the question number one. Question number two is, if this levy fail, what gonna happen?
Yeah. So try to answer your first question. Really, the proposed, as well as where it landed the process, was really trying to be responsive to the needs that we were seeing across the system and across the county. From when we did outreach to the community directly to having conversations with jurisdictions and parks directors like Federal Way and others, trying to figure out how do you be responsive to the needs that we have. And as a result, this was what was proposed in terms of the size of the measure. So, trying to answer that first question. And then remind me of your second question, I'm sorry.
If this levy fail, what's gonna happen next?
Yeah, well, a couple of historical contexts. This isn't the first levy. I think we're working off of the success of several levies going into this one. And so I think that we're working from a ground of support going into this levy renewal. And I also think that going through the council process and the political process in terms of where the levy landed, for the most part, you also saw that policymaker elected support in passing this for the most part. And so I think with that, we carry a lot of support as we go into August 5th. And if for some reason we get to a point where it doesn't pass, well, then we'll need to reassess what that means and what that looks like at that time and figure out sort of how to go from there.
Thank you.
Councilor Dovey.
Oh, excuse
All right. Any other questions for Warren? Okay. Thank you very much for your comprehensive presentation. Very much appreciate it. And thanks for the work you do.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Appreciate your public service.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, we will be in recess for purposes of executive session that, well, will last approximately 40 minutes. These are for property acquisition pursuant to RCW 4230-1101B and pending potential litigation pursuant to RCW 4230-1101I, and we'll be in recess for that purpose.